Hey friends, today we're going to hear the story of a woman from history whose name is still spoken about centuries later, Cleopatra. This isn't just the tale of a queen, but an incredible journey full of intelligence, politics, struggle, and ambition. In this story, you'll get a glimpse of ancient Egypt, where every step toward power meant danger. So sit back and enjoy this fascinating ride. Chapter 1. Cleopatra's Early Life. About 2,000 years ago, in 69 BC, a girl was born in the famous Egyptian city of Alexandria. Her name was Cleopatra VII. She would later become one of Egypt's most talked-about queens. But before she became great, she was just a regular kid with dreams. Cleopatra was born into a royal family called the Ptolemaic dynasty. This family had ruled Egypt for many years, though their roots were Greek. Their ancestors had come to power since the time of Alexander the Great. That's why Cleopatra's life was influenced by both Greek and Egyptian cultures. Her father was King Ptolemy XII. History isn't very clear about her mother, but it's believed she was also from the royal family. Cleopatra grew up surrounded by the luxury of the palace, servants, fine clothes, and lavish comforts. But palace life wasn't safe. There was always tension over power within the royal family, and often they turned against each other. Even as a child, Cleopatra realized real power didn't come just from money or the army, but from knowledge. Back then, few women got a good education, but she took her studies seriously. She learned several languages and showed deep interest in politics, math, philosophy, and literature. It's said she could easily speak multiple languages, which was extremely rare at the time. Her thinking was different from others. She didn't want to be just a queen in name. She wanted to be a ruler whose decisions shaped the whole kingdom. People were immediately impressed by her confidence and way of speaking. Her very presence drew attention. But her life wasn't all smooth. Her father was considered a weak ruler, and many Egyptians were unhappy with him. Political opposition and rebellions often put the royal family in tough spots. Cleopatra saw from a young age that power always comes with danger. When she was about 14, her life changed drastically. Her mother suddenly disappeared from history. Some believed she had died, while others thought it was a conspiracy. Around the same time, her father's health declined. These events made Cleopatra grow up fast. She began to understand that getting to the throne wouldn't be easy. One special thing about Cleopatra was that she truly embraced Egyptian culture. Though her family was Greek by origin, she learned the Egyptian language and connected herself with Egyptian traditions. People even started seeing her as the goddess Isis, a symbol of power and protection in Egyptian beliefs. Slowly, Cleopatra became a young woman who was a unique mix of intelligence, courage, and ambition. She knew that in the future, she'd have to fight not only external enemies, but also members of her own family, and this is where her thrilling journey to power begins. Chapter 2. Cleopatra's Journey to the Throne. Cleopatra's life was never ordinary from the start. She was born into a family where power was everything. But reaching the throne of Egypt wasn't easy. Betrayal, political games, and threats to her life were always around. When Cleopatra was about 18, her father, King Ptolemy XII, died. His wish was that Egypt be ruled jointly by Cleopatra and her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. But her brother was very young and not ready for the responsibilities of ruling. Cleopatra, however, knew she had much more experience and understanding than her brother. She had focused deeply on education, politics, and diplomacy. She believed Egypt needed strong leadership, and she saw herself as the best person for that role. At first, she tried to rule alongside her brother, but things inside the palace quickly turned sour. The advisors and officials around Ptolemy XIII didn't like Cleopatra. They feared that if a smart and independent woman gained power, their influence would vanish. So they slowly started plotting against her. The situation got so bad that Cleopatra had to flee the capital for her own safety. She took some trusted friends and sought refuge in the desert areas. The young queen who once ruled the palace was now forced to wander in her own country. But she didn't give up. Even in exile, Cleopatra kept thinking about how to regain her throne. She realized courage alone wouldn't be enough. She needed a powerful ally. Around that time, Julius Caesar, the famous Roman general, arrived in Egypt. Rome was one of the world's strongest powers, and Caesar's influence was huge. Cleopatra decided she would meet Caesar no matter what. But her enemies were watching her everywhere, so she had to come up with a very clever plan. It's said that one night she was secretly brought to Caesar's residence, hidden in a carpet or cloth. When she suddenly appeared before him, Caesar was amazed by her courage and confidence. Cleopatra didn't just ask Caesar for help, she also showed her intelligence and leadership. She talked in detail about Egypt's situation, her struggles, and her dreams. Caesar realized this woman wasn't famous just for her beauty. She had extraordinary wisdom and ambition. Soon, Caesar decided to support her. With his help, Cleopatra faced her enemies. The fight wasn't easy, but in the end, Ptolemy XIII's power weakened, and Cleopatra succeeded in reclaiming Egypt's throne. Once back on the throne, Cleopatra's goal wasn't just to stay in power. She wanted Egypt to become prosperous and influential again. She started reforms, boosted trade, and worked on strengthening ties with Rome. Slowly, Egypt began to stabilize, and Cleopatra's influence grew stronger than ever. Chapter 3. Cleopatra and Julius Caesar's relationship. Cleopatra was now the ruler of Egypt again, but her life was still full of challenges. She had taken help from Rome's powerful general Julius Caesar to regain her throne. Gradually, their relationship went beyond politics. It grew into one of trust, ambition, and emotion. After defeating her enemies, Cleopatra began strengthening her hold on Egypt. Her dream was for Egypt to not just be an old kingdom, but to be counted among the world's major powers again. She knew that strong ties with Rome were crucial for her country's future. After the war, Cleopatra and Caesar spent a lot of time together. Cleopatra admired Caesar's leadership and political experience, while Caesar appreciated her intelligence, confidence, and charm. Despite their age difference, they formed a deep connection. Caesar spent some time in Egypt and got to see Alexandria's grandeur up close. Cleopatra introduced him to Egypt's culture, knowledge, and rich history. Nile River cruises, royal ceremonies, and future plans. All this brought them closer. Not long after, Cleopatra gave birth to a son. They named him Ptolemy Caesar, but people called him Caesarion. Cleopatra saw her son as a powerful future heir. She dreamed that one day he would be a symbol of new power between Egypt and Rome. However, back in Rome, many were unhappy about their relationship. Roman leaders didn't like Caesar getting so close to a foreign queen. Many saw Cleopatra as an ambitious and influential woman which made them uneasy. Some feared Egypt's influence could grow in Roman politics. When Caesar returned to Rome, he invited Cleopatra to come as well. Cleopatra arrived in Rome with her son and royal entourage. Her arrival was quite a spectacle. Along with her came the splendor of Egypt, magnificent clothes and unique traditions. In Rome, Cleopatra lived in a lavish residence. She appeared at important events and met influential people. Egyptian fashion and style started becoming a topic in Rome. But not everyone liked her. Some thought she was arrogant and dangerous, while others admired her fearlessness and charm. Meanwhile, Caesar's power kept growing. He declared himself Rome's permanent ruler, which angered many senators. Political tensions rose and conspiracies began brewing in Rome. Then, in 44 BC, something happened that changed everything. A group of senators assassinated Julius Caesar. The news shocked all of Rome and Egypt. Caesar's death plunged Cleopatra into deep sorrow. She had lost not just her political ally, but also the father of her son. Now, things in Rome became even more dangerous for her. She realized staying there without Caesar was unsafe. So Cleopatra decided to return to Egypt immediately. She came back to Alexandria with her son and trusted people. Once home, she didn't show weakness. She focused on strengthening her kingdom, keeping the army ready, and stabilizing the economy. At the same time, she took great care in raising her son Caesarion. She wanted him to grow into a wise and powerful leader. So she started teaching him about ruling, politics, and strategy. But Cleopatra knew the danger wasn't over. Rome was still the world's biggest power, and Egypt would need new political allies to stay safe. This was a time in Cleopatra's life filled with love, power, betrayal, and struggle. Despite great sorrow, she chose to grow stronger rather than give up. Chapter 4. Cleopatra and Mark Antony's story. After Julius Caesar's death, a new chapter began in Cleopatra's life. This period was full of Roman politics, power struggles, and new relationships. It was during this time that she met Mark Antony, Rome's famous general, and their relationship became one of history's most talked about love stories. After Caesar's death, a fierce battle for power broke out in Rome. Many leaders wanted control of the empire. The main players were Mark Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus. They formed a political alliance to rule Rome together, but trust between them didn't last long. Mark Antony was known as a brave warrior and influential leader. His courage on the battlefield was legendary. People were impressed by his confidence and personality. On the other hand, Cleopatra was already famous for her intelligence and political skills. Rome needed Egypt's wealth and resources, while Cleopatra wanted to protect Egypt from Rome's growing pressure. Their interests were connected in some way. Not long after, Mark Antony invited Cleopatra to meet him in the city of Tarsus. Cleopatra understood this wasn't just a casual meeting, but a chance to shape the future. So she planned a grand arrival. When she reached Tarsus, her entrance was magnificent. Her royal ship shone with gold and precious decorations. The air was filled with fragrant smoke and music. Cleopatra presented herself as if a goddess had come down to earth. The crowd was amazed by her grandeur. Mark Antony couldn't help but be impressed. Cleopatra wasn't just beautiful, she was smart and confident in conversation. She spoke so skillfully that he was instantly drawn to her. This was the start of their relationship. Later, Mark Antony went to Egypt, where Cleopatra gave him a royal welcome. In Alexandria, they spent time at great ceremonies and festivals. She showed him Egypt's culture, arts, and prosperity. Their bond grew deeper over time. Their relationship wasn't just emotional, but also a political alliance. Mark Antony needed money and support for his armies and campaigns, while Cleopatra wanted to ensure Egypt's safety. They knew that being together would greatly strengthen their power. Over time, they had 3 children. Cleopatra saw her kids as future powerful rulers. She believed their family could change the course of history for Egypt and Rome. But in Rome, dissatisfaction with their relationship grew. Especially Octavian hated it. He started spreading rumors that Cleopatra wanted to control Roman politics. Many Roman leaders accused Mark Antony of falling under the queen's influence. Things got worse when Mark Antony distanced himself from his wife Octavia and stayed with Cleopatra. This openly showed the tension between Octavian and Antony. Political rivalry turned personal. Finally, things got so bad that war preparations began. Octavian declared Mark Antony and Cleopatra enemies of Rome. On the other side, Antony and Cleopatra also prepared their armies to defend their kingdom and future. Both knew the upcoming battle would decide not just power, but their entire future. Chapter 5. Cleopatra and Mark Antony's final battle. Cleopatra and Mark Antony were no longer just lovers. They were powerful partners standing together in the fight for power and politics. They dreamed of a future where their influence would remain strong over both Rome and Egypt. But time was slowly turning against them. Their biggest opponent, Octavian, was growing stronger. His goal was clear: defeat Mark Antony and bring Egypt under Rome's control. He prepared his army fully for war. On the other side, Cleopatra and Mark Antony weren't backing down. They gathered their navy and troops and got ready for a decisive battle. This historic fight took place in 31 BC near a place called Actium, known as one of history's most important naval battles. On the day of the battle, the sea was filled with warships and soldiers. Cleopatra led Egypt's ships, while Mark Antony took charge of his army on the front lines. At first, they believed they could stop their enemies, but Octavian's strategy proved stronger. In the middle of the battle, Cleopatra's ships suddenly turned back. This changed the entire course of the fight. Many soldiers got confused, and Antony's forces weakened. Historians still debate why Cleopatra did this. Some think it was a strategic move, while others say it was out of fear and insecurity. Whatever the reason, that moment changed everything. Mark Antony was devastated mentally. After the defeat, he returned to Egypt and met Cleopatra. They had a difficult conversation, but stayed together. They knew Octavian's army would soon reach Egypt. In Alexandria, they tried one last time to save their kingdom. But their armies were weak, and the enemy was advancing fast. They realized their chances of winning were almost gone. Mark Antony fought bravely in the final struggle, but defeat was certain. At one point, he got false news that Cleopatra was dead. This broke him completely. In despair, he decided to take his own life. Later, it was found out Cleopatra was alive and hiding in a safe place. The wounded Antony was brought to her. It said they spent his last moments together, and he died in her arms. Now Cleopatra was alone. She knew Octavian would soon capture her and parade her defeat in Rome, but she wasn't ready to accept such a humiliating life. She chose to live her final moments like a queen. She wore royal clothes and surrounded herself with regal symbols. According to legends, she ended her life by the venom of a poisonous snake, choosing death on her own terms. When Octavian reached her chambers, he found Cleopatra dead. Her face showed not fear, but peace. It said even Octavian was impressed by her determination and courage. With Cleopatra's death, Egypt's independent rule ended. After that, Egypt came completely under Roman control. Though her life ended, her story became immortal. People still remember her as a wise, brave, and influential woman. She proved in her time that leadership isn't just for men. Cleopatra's story teaches us that even in tough times, a person can keep their dignity and courage. She never gave up easily and fought for her dreams and kingdom until the very end. Her life was a unique mix of love, power, struggle, and sacrifice. That's why even after centuries, the world still remembers her name. Friends, Cleopatra's story inspires us to stand firm for our goals instead of backing down from fear. No matter how tough the situation, confidence and courage make a person unforgettable.